quick reminder, smash that subscribe button. Story 1. A kid set the classroom on fire because I told him to put his phone away. First period. I didn't even know anyone's name yet. I asked him politely to put the phone in his backpack. He ignored me. I asked again. He looked me dead in the eyes and pulled out a lighter. I thought he was just trying to intimidate me. Then he lit a piece of paper on fire and threw it into the trash can. The trash can was full of paper. It went up fast. Kids started screaming and running. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, but I'd never used one before and couldn't figure out the pin. Another teacher ran in from next door and put it out. The fire alarm was going off. The whole school evacuated. The kid who did it just stood in the parking lot smiling. He got expelled, and his parents tried to blame me for antagonizing him. The principal said I handled it fine. I never went back to that school. Story 2. I had a parent show up mid-class and try to fight me because I gave her son a 0 for not turning in his assignment. I was covering a 7th grade English class. The assignment was due the day before. The kid didn't do it. I marked it as a 0 in the system like the regular teacher told me to. 2 hours later, this woman bursts through the door screaming. She's yelling, "Where's the sub? Which one is the sub?" I raised my hand like an idiot. She stormed over and got in my face. She said her son is not a failure and I had no right to give him a 0. I explained it was the regular teacher's policy. She said, "You're the one who put it in the computer." She shoved me. I stumbled back into the whiteboard. The kids were frozen. I told her she needed to leave or I was calling security. She said, "Call them." I called. She kept yelling until security showed up and escorted her out. She was banned from the school. The kid didn't even seem embarrassed. He just put his head down and went to sleep. Story 3. A student threw a desk at me because I asked him to stop talking during a test. Not a small desk either. One of those combo chair desk things. He was whispering answers to his friend. I walked over and quietly asked him to stop or I'd have to separate them. He told me to mind my business. I said, "This is my business. I'm the teacher." He stood up, picked up the desk, and threw it. It hit me in the shoulder and knocked me down. I was on the ground, and he was standing over me, yelling that I disrespected him. Other kids pulled him back. One girl ran to get help. The principal came and the kid was still yelling. Security had to restrain him. I had a bruised shoulder for 2 weeks. The kid got suspended for 10 days. 10 days. He was back in 2 weeks. I saw him in the hallway, and he just smiled at me. I never subbed at that district again. Story 4. I walked into a classroom and there was a goat, a live goat, just standing in the middle of the room eating paper off a desk. The kids were hysterical. Apparently some seniors snuck it in as a prank. The regular teacher was out, so lucky me. I asked whose goat this was. Nobody answered. They were all filming on their phones. The goat started eating my lesson plans. I tried to grab it and it head-butted me in the thigh. Hard. I almost fell over. The kids lost it. I called the front office and said there's a goat in my classroom and I need help. The secretary thought I was joking. She said, "A what?" I said, "A goat. A farm animal. It just head-butted me." She sent the janitor. It took 3 adults 20 minutes to get that goat out of the room. The seniors who did it got suspended, but they became legends. The video got 50,000 views. I'm in it getting head-butted. My family still sends it to me on holidays. Story 5. A kid came to school high out of his mind and tried to climb out the 2nd-story window because he thought there was a pool below. There was no pool, just concrete. I was covering a sophomore biology class. This kid comes in late, eyes completely red, giggling at nothing. He sat down and immediately put his head on the desk. I figured he'd just sleep through class. Then 10 minutes later, he stood up, walked to the window, and started trying to open it. I asked what he was doing. He said, "I'm gonna go swimming." I said, "There's no pool out there." He said, "Yeah, there is. I can see it." He got the window open and started climbing out. I ran over and grabbed him by the backpack. Another student helped me pull him back in. He was fighting us, saying we were ruining his swim. I called the nurse. They called an ambulance. Turns out he'd taken something before school. His mum came in crying. She hugged me and thanked me for saving her son. That was the only thank you I got that entire year. Story 6. I had a class of 4th graders start a riot because I said we weren't watching a movie. The regular teacher left plans for a reading lesson. The kids expected a movie because apparently every other sub let them watch movies. I said we have to follow the lesson plan. One kid said, "No, we don't." I said, "Yes, we do." He stood up and yelled, "She's lying. Subs always show movies." Then chaos. Kids started chanting, "Movie, movie, movie." They were banging on desks, throwing paper. One kid knocked over a bookshelf. Books everywhere. I couldn't get control. I called the office and asked for backup. The principal came in and the kids immediately sat down and went silent. She gave them a lecture about respecting substitutes. The second she left, a kid looked at me and whispered, "We still want a movie." I showed the movie. I'm not proud of it, but I showed it. Story 7. A student brought a snake to school and let it loose in my classroom to see me scream. He succeeded. I'm terrified of snakes. This was a high school biology class, so there were already animals in terrariums around the room. I thought I could handle it. Then I saw something moving under the desks. I looked down and there was a 3-foot snake slithering toward my feet. I screamed and jumped onto the teacher's desk. The kids erupted. They were crying, laughing. One kid was filming. I'm standing on this desk like I'm in a cartoon. The kid who brought it finally grabbed it and held it up like a trophy. I asked him why. He said, "I wanted to see if you'd freak out." I said, "Congratulations, I freaked out." He got detention. That's it, detention, for bringing a snake to school. I told the principal that wasn't enough. She said he didn't technically break any rules because it wasn't venomous. I asked what the rule was for my mental health. She didn't answer. Story 8. 2 girls got into a fistfight over a boy and I got punched trying to break it up. This was 8th grade. I didn't even see it coming. 1 second they were yelling at each other across the room. Something about who texted who first. Then one of them launched herself across 3 desks like an action movie. They were on the ground pulling hair and throwing punches. Other kids were circling and filming. I tried to separate them. I got between them and took a fist to the jaw. Saw stars. I stumbled back. Another teacher heard the commotion and ran in. It took both of us to pull them apart. Both girls were scratched up and crying. I had a bruise on my face for a week. The principal asked if I wanted to press charges. I said they're 13. I just want ice. Both girls got suspended. The boy they were fighting over wasn't even at school that day. Story 9. I confiscated a kid's phone and his dad showed up threatening to sue me. The school had a no phones policy. Phones visible during class get confiscated until the end of the day. Simple rule. This kid was watching videos during my lesson. I asked for the phone. He refused. I said it's the school rule. He handed it over while cursing at me. I put it in the teacher's desk. An hour later, his father shows up at my classroom door. He's in a suit, waving his finger at me, saying I had no right to take his son's property. I explained the policy. He said, "I don't care about policy." That phone cost $800. I said it's in the desk. He can get it at the end of the day. He said, "I want it now and I want an apology." The principal came and backed me up. The dad threatened to get a lawyer. He said, "I'll sue this whole district." The principal said, "Go ahead." He grabbed the phone and left. No lawsuit ever happened. The kids smirked at me the next week when I was back at the school. Story 10. A student accused me of something I didn't do, and I almost lost my career. I was subbing for a high school history class. Normal day. At the end of class, a girl came up and asked if she could use the bathroom. I said, "Class is over. You don't need to ask." She left. The next day I got a call saying I was under investigation. The girl told the principal I made an inappropriate comment to her. I was horrified. I didn't say anything to her except the bathroom thing. They pulled me from subbing while they investigated. 2 weeks of no work and no pay. I was panicking. Finally, they reviewed the security footage from the hallway that showed our entire interaction. It was 5 seconds long. I said one sentence. She walked away. Nothing inappropriate. The girl admitted she made it up because she was mad I took her phone earlier in class. I forgot I even did that. She got suspended. I was cleared. But I almost lost everything because a teenager was mad about a phone. Story 11. I caught a kid selling candy and he offered to cut me in. This was middle school. The kid had a whole operation. Backpack full of candy bars, gummy worms, chips. He was making sales between classes and during lunch. I noticed kids coming up to his desk, all period handing him cash. Finally, I walked over and asked what was going on. He looked up at me and said, "You want in? I'll give you 20% to look the other way." He was dead serious. This 12-year-old was offering me a bribe. I said no, and I have to report this. He said, "Come on, miss, don't be like that. 30%. I reported it. The principal confiscated his inventory. He had over $200 worth of snacks. His mum came in, and instead of being mad, she asked where her cut went. The apple doesn't fall far. He was back to selling within a month. Different backpack. Story 12. A fight broke out between 2 kids, and one of them threw a chair through the window. Not at someone, through the actual window. Glass shattered everywhere. It was a 6th grade class. 2 boys had beef from outside school. I didn't know anything about it. One of them said something. The other one stood up. Before I could react, they were swinging. Kids scattered. I yelled for them to stop. One of them grabbed a chair, and instead of hitting the other kid, he threw it sideways, and it went straight through the window. Glass exploded onto the grass outside. A teacher walking by almost got hit. Everyone froze. Even the fighters stopped. They just stared at the broken window like they couldn't believe it. Admin came running. Both kids were suspended. The one who threw the chair got expelled. His parents had to pay for the window. They tried to argue that the school should have shatterproof glass. The district disagreed. Story 13. A kid brought a firecracker to school and lit it in the middle of class because I told him he couldn't go to the bathroom. He said he really had to go. I said he could wait for the bell. He reached into his hoodie, pulled out something wrapped in tape, and lit the fuse with a pocket lighter. I didn't even register what it was until it started sparking on the floor. The entire class screamed and scattered. I grabbed a trash can and threw it over the thing just as it went off. The can flew sideways. Papers everywhere. The vice principal ran in like he thought the building collapsed. The kid stood there covering his ears and said, "See, now I really need to go." He was expelled on the spot. I had ringing in my ears for 2 days. Story 14. I walked into a class during a full lockdown because a student brought a knife and was threatening another kid over a stolen hoodie. Nobody warned me before I entered the room. I opened the door and 30 kids were hiding behind desks. One boy was standing in the middle, shaking with a blade in his hand. I told him to put it down. He turned to me and said, "Stay out of it." I backed up and held the door open while another teacher pulled kids into the hallway. Admin and security were sprinting from both directions. They tackled him before he hurt anyone. I spent the next hour giving statements. Nobody apologized for sending me into that room with 0 information. I didn't sleep that night. Story 15. A girl tried to jump out of a moving school bus on a field trip I was supervising. We weren't even supposed to leave campus, but the regular teacher left plans for a museum visit. Halfway there, she started yelling that someone stole her AirPods. I told her to calm down and we'd look when we stopped. She screamed that I didn't believe her and tried to push past me to the front of the bus. The driver yelled at her to sit down. She didn't. She yanked the emergency door lever and the alarm went off. The door opened halfway while we were still rolling. I grabbed her by the jacket and pulled her back while the driver slammed the brakes. The rest of the kids were shrieking. She kicked me and said I ruined her escape. We had to turn around and go straight back to school. I filled out incident reports for 3 hours. Alright, that's it for substitute teacher nightmares. If you've ever survived a day as a sub, you deserve way more than they're paying you. Make sure you're subscribed for more, and I'll see you in the next one.